To everyone around her, Nora was fine. At least, that's how it looked from the outside. She had always been the strong one, calm, reliable, the person others turned to when something went wrong. When a project was falling apart, Nora stayed late. When a decision needed to be made, everyone waited for her answer, and she always had one. Clear, confident, without emotion. People respected her strength. Her managers trusted her. No one doubted that Nora could handle anything, and for a long time, she did. She had been strong for so long that she no longer remembered what it felt like to be weak. There were no emotional breakdowns in her life, no dramatic scenes. Even tears were rare. When things became difficult, she pushed forward. When it hurt, she worked more. When emptiness appeared, she filled it with tasks, plans, obligations. Her days were perfectly organized. Every hour had a purpose. Every minute was occupied. From the outside, it all looked like control. At home, Nora was just as convenient. She remembered important dates, cooked dinners, listened when others spoke. When her husband was tired, she didn't complain. When she herself felt exhausted, she stayed silent. She didn't want to be a burden, didn't want to be too much, didn't appear weak. So she smiled, nodded, and said, "I'm fine." And people believed her. Late at night, when the apartment became completely quiet, Nora sometimes sat on the edge of the bed and felt an unfamiliar emptiness inside. Not pain, not fear, just emptiness, as if a light inside her was slowly fading, unnoticed by everyone. She lay awake staring at the ceiling, thinking, "I'm tired." But even that thought felt forbidden, because tiredness meant weakness, and she had never learned how to be weak. She believed that if she kept going, if she endured a little longer, if she simply didn't stop, everything would eventually fall into place. What she didn't know was this: strength used for too long, without rest, without support, without warmth, eventually stops being strength. It becomes weight, silence, loneliness. And that was how her fall began. The year everything collapsed started quietly. There was no explosion, no dramatic moment that destroyed everything at once. One evening, her husband sat across from her at the kitchen table. Between them stood 2 untouched cups of tea. He didn't look at her. He spoke calmly, without anger, without accusations. He said he no longer felt anything, that he was tired, that staying together no longer made sense. Nora listened. She nodded. She didn't cry. She didn't try to stop him. She handled it the same way she handled everything else, with control and dignity. When he left, the apartment became unusually quiet. At first, the silence didn't feel frightening. It felt spacious, almost light. But behind it came emptiness, the kind nothing could fill. A few weeks later, Nora was called into a meeting at work. The conversation was short and formal. The company was restructuring. Budgets were being cut. The decision had already been made. They thanked her for her years of service. They wished her luck, and they closed the door. She walked outside carrying a small box with the pieces of her former life, a mug, a notebook, a few photos. She felt no anger, no tears, just a strange sense that everything around her had suddenly become unreal. She told herself it was temporary, just a pause, that things would return to normal. They didn't. A month later, the phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. The voice on the other end said her father's condition had worsened. The words were spoken carefully, as if softness could protect her from their meaning. Hospitals, corridors, the smell of medication. Nora sat on a hard chair, staring at one point on the wall. For the first time, she understood what it meant to be truly alone, without stability, without a role, without someone who had always been there. That was when exhaustion turned into fear. Fear of a future without something to hold on to. She came home late, opened the door to an empty apartment, placed her bag down, sat on the couch, and sometimes stayed there for hours. Her phone stayed silent, and slowly she realized this was not a pause. This was falling. The days that followed lost their shape. Morning blended into evening. One day looked identical to the next. Everything became heavy and gray. Nora had always lived by a schedule, but now there was none. No alarm clock, no commute, no obligations. She woke up already tired. She sat on the bed, staring at the wall, unsure what to do next. She sent out resumes, went to interviews, smiled politely, and everywhere she heard the same thing: "We'll call you back." No one ever did. Each rejection extinguished something small inside her. Friends stopped checking in, not out of cruelty, but discomfort. The other person's pain makes us uneasy. Nora didn't blame them. She stopped waiting for messages. She visited her father in the hospital, sitting beside him for hours. He slept most of the time. Sometimes he woke and smiled weakly. "How are you?" he asked. "I'm fine," she said. Even here, she couldn't tell the truth. At home, the silence no longer felt neutral. It pressed against her. Nights stretched endlessly. Sometimes she walked through the apartment, back and forth, as if movement might bring direction. But nothing returned. One thought began to appear more often, colder each time. "I'm not needed." Days repeated, and somewhere deep inside, Nora understood that if she continued like this, she wouldn't disappear physically, she would disappear inside. One evening, she stopped resisting the emptiness. She put on her coat, closed the door, and went out. She walked without a destination, through streets she knew, past people she didn't notice. The city moved around her, but she felt separate from it, as if behind glass. The further she went, the quieter it became. Almost without realizing it, she found herself walking towards a bridge. Old, metal, poorly lit. The underwater below was black and still, unnaturally calm. She placed her hands on the cold railing and thought, maybe I don't have to keep going. And then a voice spoke behind her. "Cold tonight, isn't it?" She turned. A man stood a few steps away, mid-50s, calm, ordinary. He wasn't looking at the water, he was looking at her. He spoke calmly, without urgency. He said he came here often to think, that this place knew how to listen. Then he said something that reached too close to home. People don't end up on the edge because they're weak. They end up there because they've been strong for too long. He sat on a nearby bench and invited her to sit if she wanted. No pressure, just to rest. Nora hesitated. Then she stepped away from the railing and sat. For the first time that night, the dangerous thought retreated. They sat quietly. And then Nora began to speak. About her marriage, her job, her father, the emptiness, the exhaustion. The man listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said softly that he had lost his son 5 years earlier. He spoke of standing on that same bridge, night after night, convinced he couldn't go on. One evening, someone sat beside him, said nothing, just stayed. "Tonight," he said, looking at her, "I'm staying." Nora cried, quietly, without shame. Minutes passed. 3 minutes in which nothing had to be decided. 3 minutes in which she didn't have to be strong. "I don't want to die," she whispered. "I just didn't know how to live." "That can be found," he said. "Not immediately, but it can be." And in that moment, Nora chose to stay. She walked home alone, slowly, carefully. At home, she lay down and slept, deeply, peacefully, for the first time in months. Life didn't become easy overnight, but it began to move again. She found work, small, imperfect, but real. Her father slowly recovered. She learned to stop when she was tired, to say when things were hard. She never saw the man from the bridge again, never knew his name, but every time she passed that place, she slowed down and thought, "Thank you." Nora's story is not about miracles, it's about presence, about 3 quiet minutes that say, "You are not alone." And sometimes that is enough.